This is your boy on your King of Sinners 777 gaming channel, and I'm here talking about Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2 because I'm hyped for it. I don't usually do talking videos, I just upload gameplay and stuff like that, but I want to get to the main subject before, people want to leave. So we're going to be talking about a hero that is going to return, because nothing forestalled this man's return. Genesis, Rhapsodos from Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII. Of course, you should already know that. There's evidence he is going to return. This is not no theory. I know this is old. This is some bold-ass claims. But listen to this. I'm going to see if I can upload 30 minutes. If I can't, I'll just cut it down. But I believe Genesis will return because the new continuity of Final Fantasy VII Remake is going to include the compilation, and it has. It include Crisis Core and the base remake game. And then also with the episode Yuffie, we included the deep ground characters such as Nero and Weiss, an episode intermission with Yuffie. So that means 100% without shadow of a doubt, and I can say this very, confidently, that the reason why Genesis will return, even if it's part 3, I still say part 2, because part 2 is going to have a lot to do with Deep Ground, because Deep Ground has been teased in intermission, and when you beat Weiss tells Cloud to go to Deep Ground to face him. So I'm pretty sure, and they're not going to put too much of Sephiroth in part 2 of the remake, because that putting part 2 of Sephiroth in part 2, making him fight him again as a final boss, would be redundant, and nobody wants that. This is perfect time to put the compilation in with the original. The things will still happen. You'll still get Vincent. You'll still get Sid. You'll still have to face Barrett's old friend like the original. But I'm pretty sure when he gets close to the end, that things are and they said that things are going to be real chopped up and messy. First of all, the fact that Zack is still alive in this timeline. Now, I believe that the Whispers actually are responsible for putting Zack into the timeline, our timeline. I don't think he's really alive, but, I think it's just a Zack from Crisis Core into this timeline, because the Whisper says something even more dangerous than Sephiroth. Genesis. And Genesis is really dangerous. By no means you should ever take Genesis lightly. In matter of fact, he gave his cells to Weiss and Nero, the two leaders of Deep Ground. And not just Weiss and Nero, but all the Spheats have the G cells in them. After, Minerva heals up Genesis, and sure, I think he tricked Zack into thinking he was a good guy. He looked like he was about to turn good, but at the very end of the Dirge of Service, it's very peculiar when you see Gok, the pop star in the Genesis costume, picking up Weiss's body and saying, "Brother, we've got some work to do," or in the Japanese, "Let the curtain fall to the final act." It's very peculiar. He has like a creepy smile when he takes Weiss's body in the air with him. And I was thinking, what if he went back in time and then went back to once before Sephiroth gets defeated by Cloud and Advent children, took that Sephiroth in the past to stir up the trouble? Even though Genesis and Sephiroth aren't on good terms, mind you, doesn't mean that if it favors Sephiroth's plan, I'm pretty sure he would go with it, irregardless of how he feels. I mean, he really does not fuck with Genesis after, everything that's happened. Because Genesis, threw in too much truth bombs, and, I don't know if I call it truth bombs, but because, Sephiroth's real mother's Lucretia, not Genova. But that's another, video topic I could talk about. But even then, still, I think Sephiroth would still run by Genesis's plan if it favors him. And this version of Sephiroth, he's smart. He knows that killing Aerith will continue him getting defeated by Cloud over and over. That's why the Sephiroth in the remake is way different, because that's Sephiroth from the future before. So that's Kadaj Sephiroth. Now, Kadaj Sephiroth did get defeated in the original continuity, but this continuity was messed up because Genesis could have just, sent Sephiroth in the past without even getting in contact with Sephiroth as well, to stir up the trouble. Genesis is a strong mastermind. He's actually behind most of Deep Ground's actions, even though he doesn't want to join Deep Ground himself, and he'd rather slumber in the cave, as he said. Still, he did give his G cells to Weiss, Nero, Azul, Rosso, and I think possibly Shulk. I'm not sure. I don't think that's the case. But he did give, and as a matter of fact, that's what Weiss refers to in Crisis Core as a subject as being his brother, because they would be sharing the same G cells. So, and really, Genesis is a very, calculative villain. He's playing most of the stuff. Not to mention, there's another possibility that reason why Genesis will return besides Deep Ground. Even though he's healed up and degradation is cured and stuff like that, which you should already know if you play Crisis Core. Another thing that's peculiar about this is that he also wants Cloud's S cells. Maybe he still needs the S cells. He knows even though Sephiroth is around. Now, I think at this point Genesis will believe that Sephiroth's defeated or dead, because Sephiroth did get defeated, but we didn't get to see him die on our part. But maybe Genesis or somebody of Minerva's cult, which would be Genesis's organization at this point, or even Deep Ground. Probably Weiss and Nero probably saw bits and pieces of the battle between Sephiroth and Avalanche. So I think it's possible that there's a huge possibility that they think that Sephiroth is defeated. So this is where they would report to Genesis, and then Genesis will probably wake up and say, let the curtain fall for the final act, and then start everything up. Now, mind you, he still would need the S cells to go with his G cells in order to have his plan. Cloud had the last G cells, because in Crisis Core, Genesis thinks Sephiroth's dead. Technically is, till live stream and Final Fantasy VII stuff, but but and the fact that Zack had to protect Cloud from Genesis, because Genesis really wanted the cells. He would do anything to get those cells that Cloud has. So the fact that he knows Cloud is still around and is believing that Sephiroth got defeated by Avalanche, it could be possible, entirely possible, he could, come back and try to get Cloud's S cells. And it's not entirely impossible, that this could happen. It's very, very possible that that could happen. And like I said, the remake part 2 is going to take a turn and stuff. After you get to a certain point of the game's going to change 100%. You've got new players in the game. We got Zack still alive. Deep Ground is integrated, so now Deep Ground is no longer chronological, so it's not going to happen. Deep Ground's not going to happen after Final Fantasy VII. It's happening during Final Fantasy VII in the remake timeline. The remake timeline is the entire compilation in one. It's no longer Final Fantasy VII. This is the Final Fantasy VII remake is the 5th game of the compilation. It's combining everything into one. Now all of them are converged. So it's Dirge of Cerberus is written out of canon, by chronological. Evan Children is written out of canon because of a Crisis Core had to happen, of course, as we see Zack's last stand. So it's possible that we could have that Genesis could appear into part 2. Not to mention the proto-material and Vincent. Vincent's another thing that is connected to Genesis. The proto-materia. With the proto-materia, Cloud's S cells, and possibly even the black materia that Sephiroth's looking for. Genesis could have his complete plan. Genesis wants to wipe out the world and rebuild it and make it into a better, peaceful society. Genesis is like Mamoru Uchiha. He wants to create a world of nothing but peace. But just like Sephiroth, he takes extreme measures. And that's why I say Genesis is a very dangerous character. he looks like he learned his lesson because, well, I think after Zack defeated Genesis, I think Genesis is afraid to fuck with Zack. So when Zack appears and Genesis is right there, I'm pretty sure Genesis is probably gonna freak out when Zack shows up at the very end of the remake part 2. We do not know what's gonna happen, but they said in the interview, and it's stated that there's gonna be some change at the very end of part 2, and it makes sense because part 1 was like that. We weren't supposed to fight Sephiroth as a final boss in part 1, but look what happened. And not only that, but Yuffie already fought Nero before Dirge of Cerberus in this timeline. So, just saying, bud. Just saying. And it's another possibility that he will show up in Remake Part 2. He will show up in Remake Part 2. 100% possibility, without shadow of doubt, without even thinking the inconceivable ways he will show up. Black Materia, Deep Ground, Vincent Valentine, which is connected to the Proto Materia, Black Materia. Not to mention that Sephiroth's inclusion to the past, and it's the Avid Children one. That's why the fight was like Avid Children. He was able to grow a black wing because that was Kadash Sephiroth after being fully merged, which I call Malice Sephiroth. They defeated Malice Sephiroth, but there's actually 2 Sephiroths in this timeline. So that means the Avid Children Sephiroth's in there. So that means Avid Children, Crisis Core, and Dirge of Cerberus is inside the remake timeline. It coexists with the remake timeline. The original Final Fantasy VII stuff will happen, but so will the compilation stuff. And I think Deep Ground's gonna be the next villains. And after Weiss gets defeated and by Cloud and them, this is gonna wake Genesis up, and maybe he'll start part 3. Now, I think it's possible that Aeris will still die in part 3, and we'll still have to fight Sephiroth, but we could be facing both Sephiroth and Genesis. And who knows, they might carry Genesis from part 2 to part 3 of the remake. It's not too impossible. Genesis is a very dangerous character. Very. If anyone's played Crisis Core, I mean, this is the man who caused Sephiroth to burn down Nibelheim and caused the Nibelheim burning incident. This man convinced Sephiroth that he was such a monster that Sephiroth ended up burning the town down. So he's just as deranged as Hojo. After all, mentally unstable, recognized mentally unstable, and they're both, Hojo and Genesis are very unstable. Very unstable. We don't know anything about Genesis, but it's hard to trust him. It really is, because you see the thing in Dirge of Cerberus, and that's years after his slumber. And I could see him becoming like the most powerful man. I don't even think they're going to make him a digital boss like they did Weiss. He has to be the fight. And if we don't fight Weiss at all, period, something happens, we'll most likely face Genesis. I think it's possible. I know he's not going to be integrated into the virtual world boss fight because there's no reason to. Genesis fits in the remake time perfectly. Not to mention, Genesis has the knowledge of rebirth that he taught Weiss and Nero. So, why can't Genesis have the time to have the power to go back in time and rewrite history? Maybe, I think that Genesis absorbed the knowledge to the live stream when he was in that cave all those years. The same thing, Sephiroth did. But under the cave, under Midgar, completely. But yes, Genesis will return in Remake Part 2. Thanks for watching.